A Latina soldier fights for respect in a world determined to break her. But one secret inked on her back could change everything. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories. Gabriela Morales stepped off the military transport bus into a wave of searing heat and dust. The sun blazed overhead, bouncing off rows of steel barracks and the crisp uniforms of soldiers marching in perfect lines. The sharp scent of sweat, metal, and desert sand filled her lungs as shouts from drill sergeants echoed across the yard. She tightened her grip on the strap of her duffel bag, spine straight, chin high. She was here to prove she belonged. Raised in a military family, Gabriela knew the language of discipline and sacrifice by heart. Her late father, General Alejandro Morales, had been a hero in the U.S. Marines. His photo, in full-dress blues, hung in her childhood living room, eyes fierce but proud. For as long as she could remember, she dreamed of following his footsteps, of wearing the uniform, not just as his daughter, but as a soldier in her own right. Boot camp was supposed to be hard. That was fine by her, hard she could handle. As she moved into formation, she glanced around at the sea of recruits in their matching fatigues. But no matter how uniform the camouflage, her caramel skin seemed to glow under the sun, a beacon she couldn't hide. "Base front, Morales," barked Sergeant Vargas, his voice like gravel over concrete. Gabriela snapped to attention. She'd only been on base an hour, but the difference in tone was obvious. Orders came at her sharper, louder. Tiny mistakes earned her extra push-ups while others were simply corrected. "Your hair's sticking out, Morales. You want to braid it tighter or you want to shave it off?" sneered Sergeant Lopez, leaning in close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. Gabriela's jaw clenched. She forced herself to answer calmly. "Yes, Sergeant." "I'll fix it, Sergeant." The day blurred into drills, running laps until her legs burned, holding plank positions until her arms shook, learning how to stand, salute, march in precise sync. Every shout from an instructor felt aimed directly at her. At mess hall, whispers floated around her like cigarette smoke. "He's trying too hard. Probably thinks she's special. Bet she won't last the month." She ate quickly, staring at her tray, pretending not to hear. That night, as lights out echoed through the barracks, Gabriela lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling. A single tear slipped from the corner of her eye, hidden in the darkness. "I just have to be strong," she whispered to herself. "Like Papi taught me." She remembered her father's voice telling her that in the military, respect came to those who earned it. She held on to that hope like a lifeline. But the next morning proved the battle was far from over. During lineup, Sergeant Lopez singled her out. "You think you're too good for this, Morales? Maybe you should go back to the kitchen where you belong." A few recruits laughed under their breath. Gabriela stood stiffly, her eyes forward, rage boiling under her ribs, but she said nothing. Not yet. Because even as shame crept hot over her skin, she refused to let them see her break. By the second week of boot camp, Gabriela Morales was running on fumes. Sleep came in scraps of minutes between the blare of bugles and the punishing rhythm of training. Yet despite exhaustion, she was beginning to shine. On the track, she was the first to finish the 5-mile runs, her breathing measured, her stride relentless. During obstacle courses, she climbed walls and crawled under barbed wire faster than most of the men. But none of that seemed to matter. While recruits around her earned praise and claps on the back, Gabriela received only scowls. "Lucky shot, Morales," said Sergeant Vargas after she hit every bullseye at the firing range. "Don't get cocky, Morales," sneered Sergeant Lopez. "One good day don't mean shit." Gabriela lowered her weapon, fingers trembling slightly. She wanted to scream, "It's not luck, I worked for this," but the words stayed locked in her throat. The isolation grew heavier each day. One evening, her bunkmate, Private Elena Cruz, was frantically tearing apart her footlocker. "Where's my compass?" "And my dog tags," Elena cried, her voice shaking. Within minutes, Sergeant Vargas and Lopez were in the barracks, barking questions. "Who's been near your gear, Private Cruz?" Elena's eyes darted to Gabriela, wide with fear. "I don't know. Ooh. Sergeant Vargas turned slowly toward Gabriella. Morales, you been near Cruz's stuff? Gabriella blinked, stunned. No, Sergeant, I swear I haven't touched it. Vargas's lips curled. Funny, because you're the only one always hanging back in here. You want to come clean now or later? Other recruits stared, some whispering, some stepping further away from her bunk. That night, Gabrielle lay in silence as Elena refused to look at her. Even the few recruits who'd occasionally smiled at Gabriella kept their distance now. The next day was weapons training. The sun blazed down as recruits lined up on the shooting range. Gabriella steadied her rifle, breath slow and precise. One shot, bullseye, another, bullseye. She emptied the magazine without a single miss. A small ripple of impressed murmurs ran through the line. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in her chest. But then Captain Castillo stepped forward, expression stone cold. Morales, she snapped to attention, rifle gripped tight. He walked in a slow circle around her, voice echoing off the dry dirt. You sure you're not just playing soldier, Morales? The words slammed into her like a punch. A few recruits snickered. Someone coughed to hide a laugh. Gabrielle's vision blurred, rage and humiliation pounding in her ears. She wanted to spit back every bitter retort clawing at her throat. But she held her tongue. Yes, sir. I'm sure, sir. Captain Castillo stared at her for a long moment, then waved his hand dismissively. Fall back in line. As she shouldered her rifle and rejoined the formation, a cold certainty settled in Gabriella's bones. It didn't matter how well she shot or how fast she ran. To them, she was still just a brown girl, trying too hard to fit in a world that didn't want her. That night, as the moonlight filtered through the barracks window, Gabrielle sat on her bunk, staring at the scarred wooden floor. Someday, she thought, they're going to see me for who I am, not just what I look like. But deep down, another voice whispered a crueler truth. Maybe the only thing they'll ever respect is the name on my back. The desert sun was merciless, burning the training grounds into a shimmering haze. Gabriella Morales squinted against the glare as Sergeant Vargas barked orders. Hydrate or die out here, Morales, he snapped, shoving a canteen into her chest. Gabriella took a gulp, but it felt like swallowing steam. Sweat trickled down her temples, soaking the collar of her uniform. Heat waves rose off the sand as the platoon dropped for push-ups. Gabriella's arms strained, muscles screaming from exhaustion. Every time she started to falter, she forced herself to think of her father's face. Stern, proud, telling her she could survive anything. But the drills kept coming. On your feet, shouted Sergeant Lopez. Run the perimeter, move it. Gabriella staggered upright, sand clinging to her skin. She fell into step, legs pumping, but each stride felt heavier than the last. Halfway around the yard, black spots crowded her vision. Her breath rasped in her chest like broken glass. I can't fall, she told herself. Not in front of them. But her body had other plans. Just as she rounded the far corner, her knees buckled. Gabriella crashed onto the hot sand, the ground tilting and spinning. Shouts rang out around her, blurred and distant. Morales is down. Sergeant Vargas yelled for the medic. Moments later, Corporal Jimenez skidded to her side, his medical kit rattling. He ripped off his gloves, pressing fingers to her pulse. Head stroke. We need to cool her down. He pulled out scissors and began slicing through the back of her uniform to expose her skin to the air. Gabriella blinked up at him, confusion swirling in her dazed mind. Don't, she murmured, trying to roll away. Hold still, Morales, Jimenez said gently. You're going to be okay. And then everything around them seemed to stop. A sharp gasp broke the silence. Captain Castillo stood a few feet away, his mouth slightly open. His eyes were locked on Gabriella's back. Slowly, as if pulled by invisible strings, he stepped forward. Is that, he whispered. The ink was impossible to miss. The General Alejandro Morales, U.S. Marines. A proud crest arched above the name, an eagle clutching the globe and anchor. Whispers rippled through the watching soldiers. Holy shit, is that the Morales? Someone breathed. Another voice replied, trembling, "His daughter, Medal of Honor. He died saving a whole unit in Kandahar." Captain Castillo's face lost its harsh edges. He straightened to rigid attention. And then, before the entire platoon, he snapped his right hand up in a crisp salute. A hush swept over the training ground, the wind whispering through the flags overhead. Gabriella lay half-conscious, eyes fluttering, trying to focus. Her ears caught fragments of astonished voices. That's why they said the name sounded familiar. "Geez, Morales, kid. No wonder she fights so hard." But as Gabriella's world tilted into darkness, a single bitter thought cut through the fog. Why did it take a dead man's honor to make them see mine? And then her eyes closed, shutting out the blinding desert sun. The ceiling above Gabriella Morales was a sterile white, marked by flickering fluorescent lights. She blinked, disoriented, as a cool breeze from an overhead fan washed over her overheated skin. "You're awake." The voice was soft but unfamiliar. Gabriella turned her head and found Corporal Jimenez standing beside her cot, clipboard in hand. "You scare the hell out of us, Morales. Heat stroke's no joke." Gabriella tried to speak, but her throat felt like sandpaper. She managed a hoarse, "How long?" "About 12 hours, Jimenez replied. "Rest easy. You're stable now." The medic stepped away as the door to the infirmary creaked open. Captain Castillo entered, moving more cautiously than she'd ever seen him. "Morales." Gabriella instinctively started to sit up, but Castillo held up a hand. "At ease, soldier." He stood there for a long moment, studying her face as if searching for someone else beneath her features. Finally, he placed something on the table beside her bed, a small bottle of cold Gatorade. "You'll need your electrolytes," he muttered. Gabriella eyed the bottle, suspicion and confusion swirling in her chest. Castillo cleared his throat. "How are you feeling?" Gabriella swallowed hard. "I'm fine, sir." An awkward silence stretched between them. Finally, Castillo nodded. "Good. Rest up. We'll see you back in the field when you're ready." And then he was gone, leaving Gabriella staring at the closed door. When she returned to training, 3 days later, the change was instant and impossible to ignore. Sergeant Vargas no longer barked orders at her like she was subhuman. Sergeant Lopez even offered her a bottle of water during drills, his voice low and cautious. She heard whispers everywhere she went. "That's Morales' kid. Her dad was a Medal of Honor hero. No wonder she's so tough." During shooting practice, after she hit another perfect string of bullseyes, Captain Castillo walked past her and murmured, "Good work, Morales." For a moment it almost felt like the respect she'd been fighting for all along. Almost. Because every look, every polite word, carried a new weight. She could see it in the way soldiers glanced at her tattoo when they thought she wasn't looking. She could feel it in the way they hesitated before speaking to her. A strange mixture of reverence and discomfort. Even Sergeant Lopez, who once told her to go back to the kitchen, now eyed her like he was afraid to speak. Late one evening, Gabriella sat on the edge of her bunk, polishing her boots. Private Elena Cruz approached, nervously twisting her hands. "Hey, Morales." Gabriella kept polishing, eyes down. Yeah, I'm sorry about my gear. I shouldn't let them blame you. I was scared." Gabriella paused. She wanted to say 100 things. That it wasn't okay. That fear didn't excuse betrayal. Instead, she forced herself to nod. "It's fine." But inside, she knew it wasn't fine at all. Because the respect that finally came her way wasn't for Gabriella Morales, the soldier who ran faster and shot straighter. It was for later General Alejandra Morales' daughter. That night, as lights flickered out, she lay awake, staring into the dark. "They see me now," she thought, "but not for who I am." Her jaw tightened. "Someday, I'll make them see me, not just my father's name." The dawn sky was painted in streaks of rose and gold as bugles sounded across the base. Gabriella Morales stood in her pressed dress uniform, boots gleaming like black mirrors. A crisp breeze tugged at the flags flying high above the parade ground. Today was graduation. Rows of soldiers stood at attention, chests puffed out, medals glinting in the early light, family members crowded behind barricades, cameras flashing as they tried to capture every second. Gabriella could feel 100 eyes on her as Captain Castillo stepped up to the podium. His voice boomed across the field. Today we honor a new class of Marines. Each one of you has earned the right to wear this uniform. He scanned the formation and paused when his gaze fell on Gabriella. Some of you have fought harder battles than others. Castillo reached into his pocket and held up a small, round coin, gleaming gold stamped with the Marine Corps crest. The commander's coin, he said, awarded only to those who demonstrate exceptional courage and resilience. He walked toward Gabriella, Private First Class Gabriela Morales, front and center. Gabriella stepped out of formation, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. Castillo placed the coin firmly into her hand. You've earned this, not just because of who your father was, but because of who you are. Applause rose around her, swelling louder and louder, and camera shutters clicked. Soldiers nodded at her with newfound respect. Even Sergeant Vargas and Sergeant Lopez stood clapping, though their faces were tinged with awkward humility. The commanding officer gestured for silence. Morales, would you like to say a few words? Gabriella stared out over the crowd. Her tongue felt dry as sand. For a moment, all she wanted to do was retreat, to let the applause carry her away. But something deep inside pushed her forward. She stepped up to the microphone. My father, General Alejandro Morales, died a hero in Kandahar, she began, voice steady though her hands shook. He died to protect the soldiers beside him, black, Latino, white, everyone. He believed that the uniform we wear makes us equal, that respect is earned by how we serve, not by our skin color or by our name. The silence was absolute. Even the wind seemed to pause. I'm proud to be his daughter, Gabriella continued, but I don't want respect just because I carry his name. I want it because I've earned it. And I want every soldier here to know your worth isn't decided by your last name or the color of your skin. It's decided by your actions, by your courage, by your heart. A hush hung over the parade ground. Several officers stared at the ground, faces shadowed with emotion. Some of the younger soldiers blinked away tears. Slowly, Captain Castile began to clap. One by one, the rest joined in, until the parade ground thundered with applause. Gabriella stepped back from the microphone, chest heaving. As the ceremony ended, people surrounded her. Some shook her hand. Some simply touched her shoulder as they passed, murmuring, "Thank you." But even in the glow of the celebration, Gabriella felt a quiet resolve burning inside her. She knew she still had more to prove. But she also knew one unshakable truth. Honor isn't inherited, it's lived. And as she left the parade ground, the commander's coin heavy in her pocket, she walked with her chin high, not just as Lieutenant General Morales' daughter, but as Private First Class Gabriela Morales. The Marine, Gabriella proved that true honor is earned, not inherited. What would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.